Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And again, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys every night on this amazing month of Ramadan. And I'm so grateful overall that, again, this month, take advantage of it. As we say every night, its days are the best of days and its nights are the best of nights. Stay up, read Quran, meditate, do homework, anything to expand yourself in terms of these kinds of things. It's very important. Feed yourself knowledge. These are amazing things in terms of this month. So as we've been talking, it's amazing, like subhanAllah, how we develop ourselves from one stage to the next. And I want to tell you guys a quick little story that I was just having over dinner with one of my nephews. And he asked me, he's like, how do we work? And I told him we have to deal with challenges all the time. I kind of went through the presentation yesterday, and that presentation was really about challenge and skill set and how they combine and getting into flow. So I told him, there was a teddy bear. I said, there's a teddy bear right in front of you. And I said, can it move on its own? He's like, no, it can't. I said, well, you have a remote control car. I said, can that move on its own? He's like, yeah, it will move with the remote control. I said, well, Allah Azza wa Jal has put a remote control in your head and your body is the car. But I asked him then, what tells the remote control to move? He's like, my brain. And his little sister actually is intrigued now, and she answers. Mind you, they're like 6 or 7 years old. And I said, that's your brain, that's part of your body. It's not what it's telling it to move. I said, what tells your body to move? I said, shake your hand. I said, what told that to move? He's like, me. I said, who's you? And he's really thinking now. It's like, and it's amazing concepts. These are amazing concepts to teach kids. And what I'm going to do tomorrow, inshallah, is like what we're talking about right now today. It's dealing with uncomfortable emotions. I'm going to show you how to spot these things in younger children. So, and what I've noticed is, guys, I'm just going to be very straight out with you in terms of my profession and the people I deal with. I have kids who are 12 years old, 11 years old, dealing with pornography addiction. I have kids who are just completely gone haywire in terms of their anger. I have kids, and it's amazing to see what's happening and why are people so distressed in terms of this time. So what I told him is you have to make wise decisions. And he's like, what's a wise decision? And we went through a whole, like it became a whole presentation. And inshallah, I will introduce you to one of the nights, I will introduce you to the value circumplex and how we are aggressive or passive. And we can go from there. If I get a chance one of these nights to actually do that, that's a very important presentation. But tomorrow I'm gonna show you how young kids who are coming up with depression, anxiety, these kinds of things, how to spot this stuff in terms of low self-esteem and low self-confidence. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the teenage level. So tomorrow, if you know someone who's younger, having, these kinds of issues, 12, 13, 14 and up, I think it's a very important thing that they hear it tomorrow. And I'm going to give some important information on what to look for. What are the signs to look for? And there's about 4 or 5 of them, and I'm going to take you through that tomorrow. But tonight, it's really about understanding 2 parts to dealing with uncomfortable emotions. There is problem coping and emotional coping, and it's going to split into that. I'm going to show you how that works. Mostly, I'm going to talk about emotional coping because that's the heavy part of the presentation. I'm not going to go to problem coping because it may get a little dry. So I have literally 1 slide on the whole thing. And it's not that difficult to understand problem coping. It's a lot harder to understand emotional coping and how to deal with that. And more than likely, just to see what happens when people emotionally cope. And what are some good antidotes? What are some bad antidotes for that? What's the medicine for emotional coping? When we're stressed in life and life has hit us in so many different ways and we have to emotionally cope, what should we do? How should we do it? Okay. What are the good things to go through? What are the bad things that we're to go through? We're going to go through that. And we're going to talk a little bit about the cognitive aspect of it, a little bit, not too much, but that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So if you have any forms of anxiety, depression, these kinds of things, all stem from these kinds of things in terms of what kind of coping mechanisms have you set into your system. And so just to begin, guys, like, again, I have some things for you in terms of a book. But from here, what I'm also going to do in the next following nights is I'm going to give you an Islamic perspective on this stuff. And I'm going to give you a little bit now, but I'm going to go in a more thorough presentation. This is more psychological, and it ties into Islamic, and I'm going to tie as much in as I can. But the next couple of days, I'm going to do probably the presentation tomorrow on the kids in terms of dealing with them and figuring out the signs of these kinds of things. Then the next day after that, I'm going to give an Islamic perspective on dealing with the challenges of life and what it says in the Quran, what hadiths say, like something like Imam Hassan and Imam Ali advising his son and what he tells him to do in terms of when facing difficulty. Where should we go? Where should the heart be connected to? How should this work? And a lot of people now, unfortunately, there are people who have a lot of problems, but they dismiss religion completely in terms of an antidote, which is really the basis of it is dhikrullah, to have that connection to Allah. But ultimately, there's a way of doing that too. It's not just hey, just remember Allah. No, it doesn't work that way. There's a process to it. So I'm going to give you some explanations in terms of how to do that. What is sabr? How is sabr connected to all that? Okay, these kind of concepts we're going to talk about, inshallah, in the next couple of days. So before we start, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Tonight, guys, this is how old this is. This is your CDs, but it just tells you how far away when I used to be reading these books as well. So the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is an amazing book in terms of standards. I remember when my mentor put me on this and he told me he wanted me to write about the 7 habits. I literally back then wrote 1 paragraph. I think I can write a whole book now on each habit. But it just shows you how you progress in life in terms of these kinds of things. So there's 7 habits. There's also, and by the way, these are his. I forgot to give them back to him. These are actually his. But alhamdulillah, I know he will forgive me because I know what kind of person he is in his heart. So forgive me, Sayyid, for okay, that's enough. All right, so on there, he also gave me this at the end. What is the 8th habit? And not many people really know about this, but if you don't, I think Stephen Covey did a great job on this. And also that's a great pickup if you're younger. And a lot of these principles, guys, I even have lectures on these things back when I was, first starting out in terms of presenting. But all these habits are literally in the Quran and Hadith. We have all of them are there, subhanAllah. But Stephen Covey did a great job of putting this together. And knowing how to categorize time, the importance of time, these are great things in terms of that. All right, so that's it. Let's move into the presentation and then we'll go from there. Number 1 thing. All right, guys. So difficulty. إِنَّا خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِن نُطْفَةٍ أَمْجَاجٍ نَبْتَلِيهِ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ سَمِيعًا بَصِيرًا. Surely we created man and we will what? Test him. نَبْتَلِيهِ. You are going to be in ibtila, meaning that you are going to be tried. The challenges, as we said before, are like waves of an ocean. They never stop coming. The first challenge is when you come out of your mother's womb and you have to breathe. That's your first challenge. Second challenge, maybe get some milk. And the challenges keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The waves just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of responsibility. So one day you have a child that's handed to you and you're told, program it. هو الذي يصوركم في الأرحام كيف يشاء. He's fashioned you in the wombs of your mother, and And now you're this baby that's been fashioned in the womb of the mother is given to you as a product and say, here you go, program it. You better know what to do. This is another human being. It's a soul. And it's very difficult if you don't have the right information, meaning the right principles, and you don't have the wisdom to apply those principles onto situations and challenges to get you really good results so you could teach the child what they need to do. So difficulty at the end of the day is part of life. And whoever tells you, I don't have any difficulty, I don't have a set, they're lying. It's there. It's always there. Nabtalihi, you're going to be tried whether you like it or not. That's how it works. This is not a place for istiqrar, meaning for a place where there's a sanctuary and khalas, that's it, I'm done. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, this life is like a bridge. Don't build your house on a bridge. What an expression in terms of trying to give you an understanding that your house is on the other side. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, give as much as you can in this world because those provisions are going to decorate your heaven. So whatever you do right now is building your heaven. Every word that you say, every decision you make, every action that you take is building your heaven or building your hell. That's how it works. So you're going to see your actions manifest in a different reality. And when they manifest in a different reality, you're either going to love what you have or you're going to hate what you have. And subhanAllah, Allah talks about this in terms of when someone is given their book, and some people are going to be so happy, look at my book. In the Quran, he says this, and some people are going to be, oh my God, what happened? They didn't leave one thing out of this. فَمَنْ عَمِلَ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ عَمِلَ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. So whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it then, and whoever does an atom weight of bad will see it then. And that level, difficulty is part of life. It's part of us, it's part of life. Get used to it and fall in love with it. Fall in love with rejection the second you do, I promise you. And you can get your heart to turn like that. And you fall in love with the rejection of life, which is a challenge. And then your skill set comes and overtakes the challenge. The emotions behind that exam, that test, that trial, that tribulation is second to none. Those are the emotions you want. But you have to earn emotions. They're not given to you. You have to earn them. Because the only way you know you have a principle is when it's challenged. That's the way it works. So difficulty is part of life. Difficulty has two ways that we can deal with it. All right. Number one, in terms of dealing with it, is emotionally coping. Emotional coping, I'm going to go through it. And number two is what? Problem coping. I'm going to explain the difference between the two. I'm going to take you through that, and then we're going to go from there. Follow along. This is very important in terms of relationships, how people, act. And I'm going to show you some techniques that when dealing with situations like this, which one you should be doing, when listening to someone. You have to know which side they're on. Are they emotionally coping or are they problem coping? I'm going to go into that a little bit. And if I don't, I probably had some other things I needed to talk about that were more specific and more important, because that's just a side note. But let's go from here. Let's start with emotional coping. So emotional coping, focused coping involves trying to reduce the negative emotional responses associated with stress, such as, now really watch this and pay attention to these, because I know all of you have felt them. So emotional focused coping involves trying to reduce negative emotional responses. When you feel these things, it's your response, not to act negatively, not to stay in a negative state. When you're dealing with these things, embarrassment, fear, anxiety, depression, literally when you actually get excited and frustration, these things, whenever you're in these states, understand you're going to have to emotionally cope. Because when you are in these positions, you're not going to feel good about yourself. The emotional cocktail that's in your chest, you don't want there. Your body resists it. It tells you, no, what's this doing here? Fear, embarrassment, anxiety, depression, all these things you're going to have to deal with. Frustration is like a stoplight. I'm trying to get to my goal, and a stoplight stops me. That's frustration. That's the way it works. So now let's move from here. So people what? Resort to what? I'm going to show you some of the components. I'm just going to show you some generalities in terms of the things that we deal with now. One of them is alcohol. Second is drugs. And third is hallucinogens. Now, what are you doing here? I just want to say this in the beginning so you understand what happens to people when they can't handle that challenge, as we talked about yesterday. Skill set versus challenge, and they have to collide. Once they collide, your teacher tells you, listen, come up here. You're a little kid. Come up here and read the ABCs. That's a challenge. Okay. Let's say you've studied. Your skill set's there. It takes on the challenge. It bends it, and you win. You earn emotional stability. You earn self-esteem. You start liking yourself more because you like your ability. When you're challenged, your mind tells you, hey, you can take this on. It's the way it works. Now, what happens when you're dealing with embarrassment and it's that pain that you can't get results? I'm trying, and I can't get results. It's a sense of shame. So what do people eventually do? To turn off that pain, they have to turn off their mind. And when you turn off your mind, you turn it off by what? The most powerful thing that exists on the face of this earth. There's more. Really listen to this about your brain, okay? There's more synaptic connections in your brain than some subatomic particles in the universe. Think about that. Like, really think about that. There's more space in your brain than space itself. That's amazing. When I tell you before that there's literally, your mind is a universe, believe me, it's a universe. And you have to find that island, which is your own uniqueness. It's amazing how small that is. And that uniqueness only belongs to you. And each person is different. No two people are alike. In history, in the present, or in the future, there's no two people that will ever be created the same. They will differ because everyone will have their own what? Stamp. So everyone's their own universe. Understand that. Now, why would you want to turn that facility off when it's the most powerful thing on the face of this universe? Because you can't cope with these kinds of problems. That's why we turn it off, because the emotion and the pain hurts too much and we don't know how to deal with it. So that's what emotional coping is. That's what people turn to. I don't want you to do that. Trust me. There's a lot more powerful ways to get away and to feel good about yourself. You don't need an external stimulus. The stimulus is on the inside. It's right here and it's right here. And when you build the combination of the right mental process with the right emotional structure, wow. Okay, so let's move. How do you use emotional coping? Number one, okay, the source of stress is outside the person's control. What that means is when this happens, okay, emotionally coping, it's usually from the outside in, okay? So I have a situation that happens to me, it comes to my door, and what? It hits me. From there, okay, the emotions are what to focus on. So now what happens, I get hit, emotions in my chest, I feel it, okay? Sometimes, let's say you really care about someone, and I had one of my clients, and he's an executive in a company, and his girlfriend, which is obviously he's dealing with some things, and his girlfriend says to him, I don't want nothing to do with you. Now he goes on her social media and she has a picture up, and he, just by looking at the picture, he gets upset. See that trigger, it hit him really hard in terms of his chest. That's what happens. So now he's focused on the emotion. Now he's deregulated emotionally. He doesn't know what to do with himself. But imagine like you're running a whole company and that happens to you, and now you can't emotionally regulate. You can't shift. This is where coaching comes into place and doing other things like that, which becomes really more powerful. He stabilized, and then he went on and he moved forward. But okay, what type of situation usually brings about emotional reactions? Now, I'm going to take you through it. So that's what emotional coping is. It's you're focused on the emotion, okay? The source of the stress is usually from the outside of you, and the emotions are what to focus on. We start really concentrating on, man, how I feel. But most of the time, guys, another thing is with this, and I'll leave this point and I'll end with this point, is we don't know why we feel what we feel because we don't understand the triggers and how we work. I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole nother level, but that's another reason why. Okay. Now, high stress situations. We just explained one of them. Okay. These happen when the situation is not controllable, meaning someone, like, at the end of the day, someone has hurt you and they're deliberately hurting you and you can't control that. Let's say somebody's put some news about you or talking about you, or they're doing something that's completely out of your control. You can't, and let's say this person is just, you don't have access to them, but it's completely out of your control and you don't know who's saying it. Okay. These are those situations. Now, what happens to us when we hear someone backbiting about us and we don't like it? And trust me, people's like tongues are like razor blades. And especially when you get a little bit into the spotlight, they will cut you up and they have no mercy. But at the end of the day, in terms of these kinds of things, that's what happens to us. Our character is being attacked, okay? And they're non-controllable situations. Number two, no matter what I do, I can't change the situation. So here's what people do, guys. Whenever you see, let's say you're coaching someone, there's a kid that you're mentoring, let's say you're a parent, let's say you're an adult, okay? And you don't, so I cry or I laugh to deal with the situation. Some people actually laugh because they're really, really stressed. You know, I get to a point where just like, it's like the problem is so big, it's like, oh, whatever, I can't deal with this. I just start laughing, you know? It's like, you just start laughing at yourself. Let's say you're running low on money and the bank just takes a late fee and now you have nothing. And it's just you start laughing, you know? And that's literally coping. That's emotional coping. And some people just really cry. And this is a major sign, guys. When you ever seen somebody cry because of the lack of control, that's what they're saying to you. I don't have control anymore. So what we do is we're actually submitting to life in certain ways. And I'm not telling you not to cry. Crying can be very healthy in terms of you got to feel it to heal it. And sometimes crying is a great thing in terms of the healing aspect. It's a healing process. But again, you got to know when to do what. Okay. So from here, emotion-focused coping techniques include, now watch this, I'm going to take you some good ones and some bad ones at the same time. And I'm going to show you how that works in terms of how people do this. Now, okay. You can distract yourself, meaning keeping yourself busy to take your mind off of the issue, whatever it is. If people can do that, like some people are very strong at that, okay? But what happens is if you do that so much and you can emotionally regulate, you may desensitize yourself from the actual emotion itself, which sometimes you need to feel. You need to feel that hurt. You need to feel the pain of crying sometimes, because those things are actually great for you in the right situations, of course. But most of the time, if you can learn how to distract yourself and push yourself from the emotional weight, it's actually excellent. It's an excellent way to deal with it. It's a healthy way to deal with it. And you're going to see unhealthy ways to deal with it. And you're going to see why. Okay. Number two, emotional disclosure. This involves expressing strong emotions by talking or writing about negative events, this is huge, guys. In terms of these things, okay, those persistent, like whenever you get to this level, it's very important. This is important part of and I wanted to go here because I want to just kind of move forward, but psychotherapy. This is when people really, really understand that, oh my God. Like when something precipitated those emotions, okay, what you need to understand that I just got hurt. I don't know how to deal with the emotions myself. So I want to vent out to someone. Emotional disclosure is when someone is actually venting. Here's what happens most of the time, guys, between husband and wife. Most of the time, the wife is emotionally coping. She has a problem. Men usually problem cope. Women usually emotionally cope, and vice versa. But And we're talking, women are usually more emotional, and men are just usually like they're more on a logical one by one process. Okay, that's how men are created. Now, from there, I'm talking majority minority here. It's not everybody, but from here, understand when guys, and I'm going to say this as a message to you guys. And if you're married, you're not married, if you've been through relationships, you haven't been through relationships, listen up, because this can save you a lot of headache. Okay, when women are emotionally coping, all you have to do is this: say, okay, I understand. Wow, did that really happen? Okay, just listen and ask questions to understand further. Don't give solutions. That's the worst thing you can do when someone is actually doing that. I'm not talking just about women. I'm just giving you this because it's a really cool example so you understand it. But on that level, that's what happens. She's venting. He's giving what? She doesn't want to answer. She just needs to take these emotions that she feels and just dump them. That's all she wants to do. She doesn't want an answer. Don't give an answer, because when you do, you're going to become the problem. And she's like, you never listen to me. That's what she's going to start saying to you. That's what happens. So on those levels, if she's emotionally coping, don't go into problem coping strategies. Okay, don't give her an answer. She's not asking for an answer. And a really good way to do this is right before she starts talking, ask this question: do you want me to listen to you, or are you asking for my opinion? If you do that, I swear to you, you will save yourself so much headache in terms of the conversations. And this is what will happen. Let's say she says, I just want you to listen to me. Just listen to what's going on. She just wants to feel like she's understood and heard. That's all. From there, when she talks, just listen, but genuinely listen. Emotionally listen with your heart. Be present in the moment. Take your ears and really turn them on. SubhanAllah, I just got lighter in terms of, but turn them on. And what happens with that is, when that happens, she's going to now dump this information on you. Handle it, absorb it, don't give anything back. And when you do that, she's going to, after a little bit, she's like, oh, thank you for listening to me. I feel better now. That's how women cope. Okay, this is emotional coping. This is somebody releasing. They need to release. Like, part of even prayer is a tanfis, meaning a person who just needs to release. They talk to Allah. That, it's called al-bawh, meaning that you actually talk, but you actually let go. You let go of this weight that's on your chest. It's incredible. And I'm going to give you the 4 things eventually down the line as we get into more like religious aspects. I'm going to give you probably the first half of this is more psychology. Then the second half is going to be more religious based as we move into that. But here's what's going to happen in terms of this. When that happens and you just need to release, I'm going to talk about 4 things that Salah does in terms of dealing. So al-bawh, al-intima, having a sense of belonging. These are the 4 things that Salah brings to a whole nother level. Okay, so watch as we go further in terms of the series. I think you're going to really find it helpful in terms of moving on these strategies. All right, so if you're a guy and your wife comes up to you and she says, hey, I just need you, and she starts telling you about a problem, ask the first thing, okay, do you want me to just listen, or are you asking me for my advice? If you do that, I guarantee you it will save you a lot of headache and you won't be the problem when she's yelling at you at the end. Okay, so now praying. This is another way, praying for guidance and strength. Huge in terms of this, and this is what I'm going to talk about in a couple nights in terms of how that's going to go. So part of even psychology says this. So it's obvious. We even talked about building character. If you can go back to that one in terms of that presentation, that is huge in terms of this, and kind of understanding the submission of the human will to Allah, which is our submission. We are finite. Whenever you put your head in sujood, that position is where the finite meets the absolute, and you gain strength. and you actually expand yourself. You don't reduce yourself, you actually expand yourself. And subhanAllah, that's what we're supposed to do in terms of overall. When you do that and you feel the right emotions during your sujood, where Imam Ali alayhi salam says, if you were to understand the power of your sujood and the bounty of what's in it, you would never raise your head up. So understand that in terms of these kinds of things. Prayer is a very powerful, powerful mechanism. And it's literally the navigation system of your heart. And the address that Allah has put inside of you is His name. Dhikrullah. That's programmed inside your fitrah. He put the address, He gave you the navigation system. He said, program it and go. Just follow the system. It's already embedded in you. But you have to find it. You have to go inside and find what the system is. That's the way it works, guys. All right, let's move forward. Meditation and mindfulness. These are great, but they have to be what? Secondary to what? Prayer. Make sure you do that. These are great things, but they're secondary. And if you start getting into laws that go against prayer and against these kinds of things where some people start, I'm not going to get into that, but be very mindful with this stuff because it's a great thing, but it can be also it can be dangerous in certain ways when it goes against the laws of Islam. So know the laws of Islam, know how it works, know what you can do, know what your limits are, and then go from there, okay? Now, from here, eating more, and comfort food. This is another way that people emotionally cope. So you see someone who's dealing with a lot of stress, guess what? They get off their diet, they stop going to the gym. Okay, it's just dealing with that stress because they don't know how to deal with it. It's something that is very important. So if you find yourself doing that, understand you're emotionally coping with some kind of stress. Look at that, see it, see what's happening to you, and kind of go from there. So if you start eating excessive food or you stop eating at all, okay, there's some kind of stress that you're dealing with. All right, so watch your food. Now from here, drinking alcohol, focus coping techniques include, like watch this, okay, in terms of this. Drinking alcohol, in terms of the next slide. Guys, when someone drinks alcohol, what they do is their mind is flooded with the alcohol aspects of it. And now what happens is that mechanism of the steering wheel, your steering wheel, which is your mind, is very loose. Now you can't control it. Let's say you have a lot of fuel and emotion in the tank. Say you're an angry person. And when you drink, you get very violent, but you have no more control of the steering wheel. What do you think is going to happen to you? You're going to find yourself in the ditch. You're going to get a DUI. You may hit someone, kill someone. That's what happens. But we don't think about that right before we're drinking because we think we have control. But after that happens and you really hurt someone and you may be even hurting yourself, what's going to happen? So be very careful when you turn your facility of thinking. Be very careful with these kinds of things. A lot of people don't think it's that big of a deal. I can control it. Okay, no problem. But you're turning this off. Really think about that in the first place. All right. So continued. Some people use what? Drugs. So when emotional focus comes, they use drugs. Drugs is another way that people emotionally cope. They turn off the system, okay, of this because they want to turn off the emotion of the pain. That's why people do that. Even guys, even cutting, when somebody starts cutting themselves, it's not that they're trying to get attention. They're trying to turn off the pain. The physical pain is better for them. And it feels better than the pain that's in the chest. This is a lesser pain for them. Physical pain is less of a pain than the emotional pain that they're feeling. So I'd rather feel this physically than what's going on in my chest in terms of the emotional structure that I have. That's why people cut themselves. And from there, they'll use drugs, alcohol. They'll go towards even sexuality at a whole nother level. They'll be very promiscuous. They'll dress in certain ways because they need that attention. They want to feel. They need something to make them feel better. Okay, that's how it works. Now, from here, journaling. Okay, writing daily diary. This helps tremendously because every time Your pen is leaking that ink. Connected to that ink is emotion. If you can do that and really express yourself, and here's what I tell a lot of my executives. Let's say if you get angry at someone, all right, what you do, and you just need to tell them right then and there, you're fired, you're this, you're that. And you can't take it. Here's what I tell them to do. Go to your computer, put that person's email in your computer, and write everything that's in your heart that you want to say to this person. Then change that URL or the email to your email and send it to yourself. And wait till the next morning and go back and read that email and see if you would send it. And if you send it, and if you feel like you send it. Now you're okay, because this is on again. And you're given enough space to be tolerant, to be forgiving, to have patience. Now you can see things differently. That's what I tell them to do. It's very important to do that. Okay. Now, next one, cognitive reappraisal. This is where a form of cognitive change that involves, constrain potential almost situations in ways that change emotional impact. Okay, guys, what this means is really studying the situation. Cognitive reappraisal is really looking at the situation, multiple aspects, looking at it in so amazing ways where you don't judge the person too quick. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, al-ihtimal qabru al-uyub. So to actually be forbearing, to pull back, to really think about things in terms of, and give that patience, and where you have the wisdom to pull back your anger, what happens? It says this becomes the grave of sins for others. So the person comes up to you, and there's between you and him, there's a grave. They dump the sin, they apologize to you, and they say, please forgive me, because you were tolerant, you stepped back. Cognitive reappraisal is huge in terms of learning how to do that. Okay. Negative thoughts and much suppressing emotion over an extended period of time. Listen to this, guys, okay? It compromises the immune system, okay? And in terms of this, it leads to poor physical health. Guys, this is all connected. Your mind and your thoughts literally can destroy you on the inside. They can destroy your health. Stress will kill you. Understand, stress will kill you. Cortisol will kill you. Stress is needed initially. It's great. But imagine like holding on to a cup of water for 3 hours like this. Let's say stress is inside this cup and you're holding on to it for a few minutes. It's fine. It's needed. You need that stress, okay? Because it'll help you change things. But what happens when you hold on to this thing for 3 hours, 5 hours? Your arm's going to get tired. That's when you start hurting yourself, is when you hold on to stress way too long. So learn how to get rid of it. There's positive ways to actually get rid of stress, which is emotional coping. But at the end of the day, there's healthy ways of doing it. And we mentioned some of them. And there's unhealthy ways. We're also mentioning some of those. All right. So that's emotional coping. Now we're going to talk about problem coping. Problem coping is completely different. And when somebody's in this state of mind, they're actually asking you, hey, I need an answer. This is you going to your, let's say somebody writes you up and you get a negative report about some project you did. You go to your boss, you tell them, listen, I know what happened. I didn't work hard enough on it. Okay, you come up with a plan, a strategy, and you go from there. That's literally problem coping. Emotional coping, same situation. You're going to sit there, you're going to go to you won't go to your boss. You'll go home, you'll be depressed, you'll order pizza, you'll get chocolate, and you'll sit there and just take in a lot of negative food, which we talked about as one of the ways of doing it. You're doing that instead of problem coping. So emotional coping is you get the chocolate, you'll get the pizza, you'll watch a movie, you'll feel demotivated, and you won't want to do that. Problem coping is actually thinking of it and saying, you know what? Let me do this, let me do this, let me do this, take responsibility for what you're doing and go from there. That's how it works. All right. So one slide here, we're almost done. All right. Problem-focused coping targets the causes of stress in particular ways which tackle the problem or stressful situation that is causing stress. Consequently, okay, directly reduces the stress. Guys, if you can do this and learn how to emotionally cope and also problem cope at the same time, where I go to emotional coping and I need someone to talk to. And I call and I say, hey, Wissam, what's going on? I have this, I have this, I have this. And right away, you talk to someone who you really care about and someone who has wisdom, someone who has knowledge, and someone who has what? And has experienced what you have gone through. And that person can regulate you in like seconds. And sometimes that it doesn't take them, like literally it doesn't take them long at all. And they can make you get on the phone and that person's like a pill. And they give you a pill and it's like, wow, this is incredible. Like, what happened? I feel so much better. Okay, they remove the stress. That's why you can emotionally cope that way, because you called, and one of the ways to do it was calling someone, and we said emotional disclosure. That person just lets you disclose and you're venting and you go from there. That's one of the ways to do it. Now, if you go into problem coping mode, and after that you go into problem coping mode and you find a coach then, and or a mentor or a father or a mother or somebody you really trust, has wisdom, and then they give you a solution after you emotionally cope. That is very powerful. It's very powerful. Now situations don't take you that long, and you don't stay in drought. You don't stay there for days and weeks and months and sometimes years. And now that changes your whole construct of your whole body, and it becomes very difficult to come out of that. Because if you stay there far too long, guess what? It becomes very difficult to come out of that. So please be careful with these things in terms of when you're problem coping and emotionally coping. Be careful with these things. Now, let's move forward. Okay, the thinking. These are challengeable situations. This is how you start thinking. This is a challenge. I'm going to take this on. I'm going to remember what we talked about yesterday. Challenge, skill set. Bam, skill set wins. You start looking at life as challenges, but you start falling in love with challenges, because you start falling in love with responsibility, because you have fallen in love with your maximum and ultimate potential. If you can do that and realize that I'm building someone every day, and I want this person to be my character, my avatar, the person I want to become with these characteristics 5, 10, 15 years down the line, you will fall in love with responsibility, which is embedded inside challenges, challenges are embedded inside of life. That's how it works. If you could do that, I guarantee you, you'll fall in love with life. That's how it works. So now let's move forward. Problem-focused strategies aim to remove and reduce the cause of stressors, including, now I'm going to give you a list here, and then you can go from, and pretty much we're all set. All right. So now, guys, problem solving. You remember when we talked about that a couple days ago in terms of the 6 characteristics that top performers do to outperform others. Number one thing we talked about, that they are problem solvers. And we said that problems exist to create that will and that strength where you trust in your own ability so much that you can walk into ultimate darkness, and you will trust yourself to be able to get yourself out without even planning, without thinking, because you've done it so many times. It's like the back of your hand. You know it. You know how to do that. That's problem solving. Those are the people that get handed the ultimate responsibilities in life. And the things that, like when it's game 7 in the NBA finals and there's 3 seconds left and it's literally the whole game's on the line and you're down 2 points. Who are you going to give it to? That person will be handed the ultimate responsibility. Why? Because the challenge is enormous. The weight of the whole season is sitting on that one shot that you're going to take. So you don't get a second chance. It has enormous amounts of responsibility, and there's no time to think. It's got to be automatic. That means I can't think about how my elbow is or how my wrist. I can't practice to get my shot right. It's got to be automatic, because the pressure is enormous in terms of what's going to happen. You have to beat that challenge. Those challenges are only handed to the top and ultimate performers. They are the leaders because they can handle that kind of pressure. They want the ball. They want to have it in their hand because they want to solve the biggest problems. This is the ultimate challenge. Everyone wants to be a leader, but can you handle that kind of pressure? Can you handle that kind of pain if you miss? That's tough, but that's how it works. When you flip this equation and you problem cope and you emotionally cope properly, you will fall in love with life and you will get yourself to the ultimate situations that are challenges that are embedded with responsibility. And when that happens, you want to take on that responsibility. You tell the coach, give me the ball. I want it. I want to take the shot. Wow. And imagine in your heart, you feel nothing but calmness and confidence. Incredible. All right. Number 2, time management. Guys, I'm not going to get into this too much. I might do a whole presentation, which I already have. I don't know if I'm going to do that in the later part because I promise you I'm going to do more religious stuff. But time management is key in terms of the strategies. You have to understand, guys, is this. When responsibility is given and you're running multiple responsibilities, here's what I do with every one of my clients. 6 levels of responsibility: financial, family and relationships, self-development, spirituality, your community, and your health. These have to be what? Time managed. I have to know when to put time into my finances. I have to know I'm responsible for my relationships. I'm responsible for my finances. I'm responsible for my self-development. I'm responsible for my spirituality. I'm responsible for my community. I have to give my community, and I'm responsible for my health. That's the way it works. But these things have to be managed, time managed. That's the way it works. That, if you learn that, that's huge. I can't tell you something more important than that in terms of being not overwhelmed or stressed. It's because when you manage your time properly, if you manage your time properly, you will never feel overwhelmed. No, I'm telling you, never. And you will always be ahead of the game, 10, 15, 20, 30 steps. That's how it works. All right. So from here, obtaining instrumental social support. This is also huge, guys, because a lot of people, I'm sorry, they don't have that support system that's around them. Maybe they have problems with their families. Maybe they have problems with other people. They don't know how to emotionally construct a relationship with someone else. And this is a huge problem now because people don't know how to communicate as well. And they don't know how to create strong emotional connections and attachment relationships. So when they're on their own and they can't deal with themselves, they fall apart. Now they go towards the drugs, the alcohol, and everything else. That's the way it works. So obtaining that is huge. And building what? Mental muscle. Building mental muscle is literally you being able to be on your own and you're fine, and with someone and you're also fine. That's security. That's a healthy, secure person, meaning that they have their own life, they have their own ambitions, and they need someone with them as well. So, but they need to rely on that person. But when they're with that person, they're secure, they're great, they're just amazing in terms of but they're also studying, they also have their career, they also are moving towards their own potential. They're doing, their spirituality is up. Okay, they're working on their individuality as well as they're working on an interpersonal relationship. They're also realize that I'm also a component of individuality, that I have to grow. I have to push myself to the next stage that I can bring from this situation of my individuality and dump it into my relationship, which makes it so much more. Guys, when you go into a relationship, it shouldn't limit you and compromise you. It should expand you. In our religion, it's about an expansion. You actually expand in a relationship. That's how it should be. All right. So that's what it is, guys, in terms of that. Tomorrow, tune in terms of how we should be dealing with our kids at this level. And please, if you have someone who's younger, get them in front of the screen. These nights are so important. Get them off their computer, get them off the other gadgets, the technical gadgets, and try to get them in front of this. And I know it's difficult, guys, but try as much as you can. And if you can't, you learn the information and pass it on to someone. So tomorrow is very important. If you're a youth and if you're an adult and is trying to teach some youth, or a parent, or in a relationship that's going sour, tomorrow will be a great one for you in terms of understanding these things, and then we'll go from there. Please keep us in your dua. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.